Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Golden Cabinet podcast. I'm your host, Spence Pentland, and I'm here today again with Brad Whisnant. Thanks for coming on the show again, Brad. This is take two. We had some technical difficulties, but today we're here. I'm really excited because we're here to talk about Brad giving his wisdom in a course I just completed of his that's brand new about using Master Tung points for fertility. And if you don't know Brad, I mean, go at least to his Facebook page. Like I said earlier, he's got a huge following and a super engaged following. I mean, and it's because he gives a ton of value. Even, you could learn a lot about Master Tung just by following Brad. But you can also go to his website where he gives a ton of lectures. He lectures around the world as well, but records a lot of them. And he's got courses on Dr. Tan and Master Tung and business. He's opened his second practice not that long ago here now in Portland. Super busy guy. Yeah, second clinic. I don't know how he sees the patients he does, but I'm in awe. He also, he's badass. But we'll put links in the show notes, like I said earlier. And he also has taken groups of acupuncturists around the world and set up these temporary clinics. Like your last one was in Vietnam. I don't know how you pull all this stuff off. But anyway, if you don't know Brad, you should. So go check out his website. It'll be in the show notes. But for today, I'm excited, and I'm going to ramble here for 2 seconds. But for since 2004, about 15 years or a little more now, I have focused exclusively in my practice on reproductive health, fertility. And so it's, like I said, I'm probably pretty set in my ways. And I know you catered this course to that because our industry's really made some leaps forward in reproductive medicine, which is fantastic, helping a lot of people. It's great. But if you haven't heard of Master Tung and you're an acupuncturist, you're living under a rock, and Brad's one of the authorities on Master Tung. So I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to check out what Brad has to say. And it's a course. It's short and succinct, and it's, Brad, it's just you giving your pearls, of Master Tung points and how they can be applied to a fertility practice. So it's really reinvigorated me, and it started a huge discussion with my staff. I've got a number of acupuncturists about what are our favorite points, and just to let them know I'll be adding in some of these new points that I've learned about, because we cover each other's patients. We're like, what are these points you're using? And just so they know, and it's been really exciting. I'm excited to see the effect of them. So thanks for chatting a little bit about that today, Brad.
Sure. Yeah, I think I appreciate you having me on, and as always, I appreciate your opinion. I'm glad, certainly when I did this course, I was thinking about someone like you or you that obviously is very proficient and educated and clinically experienced and a ton of patients. And I wanted to set the course up. So it's not like you have to let go of what you do to add my stuff in. And same thing in my clinic, I used mostly Master Tung and Dr. Tan stuff, distal things, but I certainly use TCM points and trigger points and motor points and things like that. And I just wanted to have a class to say, here's some really nice points you can add in to what you already do. And you don't have to drop anything. You don't need to not do your stuff, do my stuff. It's not even about that. It's just take these actually little clinical things that work usually pretty well, and you can add them in. And I think the reason I want to do a fertility class is because like I said before, fertility is rarely just genitals.
Of course.
I guess it could be, but usually it's not. And even if it is, genitals are like boy or girl. It's maybe 10 or 15% of the overall picture. Yeah. And the Master Tung stuff is really, really good at internal problems. And that's one thing I think we always think, I used to work with Dr. Tan and people always think, oh, distal is just for pain, which it is. It's really good and it's very popular for that. But the Master Tung points, I think and this is where a lot of us from Dr. Tan stuff moved into Master Tung because we wanted a better internal picture. And a lot of us that started in the distal Dr. Tan camps, and this is no put down to Dr. Tan, but again, we just said, hey, what's not a better way, but a different way to treat internal stuff? And a lot of us kind of said, oh, this Master Tung stuff has a really big, powerful effect on internal things. Right. And so from a fertility perspective, I think that the tongue points are very powerful for treating a heart problem or spleen problem or gallbladder problem or liver problem or blood flow problem or phlegm problem or something other than just, genitals or groin area or reproductive organs. And then, so that's the first thing. And then the other thing too, the tongue system is very cool because it has what we call reaction areas or nerves. And this is, again, 4,000 years ago, how TCM channels were actually named. They weren't named the Xiaoyang, Yangming, Jueyin, things like that. They were named the shoulder channel, the tooth channel, the uterus channel, the belt channel. And so this idea of points treating an area goes back to the oldest text, the Magwadi text. And so tongue has a lot of points. They do this in the system, like they have points that treat the uterus.
Right.
Or they have points that treat the liver, or they have points that treat the groin, and things like that. And so there's these specific nerves that increase the function of that actual organ. So there's some very unique points that are very good at treating, the uteruses and the groins and the penises and the testicles and things like that. But then also the pathophysiology, not only from a Western perspective, but also an Eastern perspective, liver qi or heart function or dampness or inflammation or like, how about all the people that have fertility problems and it's like stress and digestion? There's some awesome things for that, right? I mean, it's huge. And so there's really good points that focus in on the large intestine or the gallbladder or the spleen or the pancreas. And that's where I think the power of the tongue system can elevate your style that you already have for fertility, whether that's a 5-element or TCM or specific fertility type of styles. That's what I try to do.
Well, I really appreciated that because, and that's, you did reiterate that through the course. So it's like experiment, find out what resonates with you, what you get effect within the clinic, and just add these to your TCM points or whatever it is that you're using.
I mean, I think we're entering a very dangerous stage in acupuncture where everybody's trademarking and trying to own 3,000-year-old techniques as their own. And I think we're also entering a very dangerous stage because I think it's mostly backed by money and people, but where people say, that style's no good, do my style. And that's fine if you're into it. But I think a bigger perspective is to say, wow, you know what, it's all the same. And, I may really be good at leg points, or I may be really good at emotional stuff, or I might be really good at hand points, or I might be really good at needle insertions, or I might be really good at palpating muscles. Okay, fine. Take your own personal ability, say, okay, God gave me green eyes and blonde hair. That's what it is. And then take those things and expand on them versus saying, oh, I'm going to take Brad's style and make it fit me because it won't work for you because you're not me. Or Spence's style won't work for me because I ain't Spence. And that's what I think what I'm trying to teach people now more days is not do the tongue system or not do the Ton system or not do any system. Do the Spence system.
Right.
Or do the Brad system. Like what lights you up? And then, take the good stuff and then throw the other crap away. And that's what I try to do in the fertility is just give you the good stuff and then you can implement it.
Well, there's probably about 5 or 6 points that resonated with me going through your course. So I'm going to experiment with those first, the 3 Bujang Ichi tongue, I call them now, on your
those
arm.
Are great.
Fuka, return to nest. And that the one you say is the best point on the body for or your money back for stress, sleep, and pain. And I hardly have patients without all 3 of those.
Yeah, we all do. We're in America and Canada.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you are. So, I loved your emphasis on stress because obviously you've treated if you don't emphasize stress and you work with fertility, you weren't listening to the patient somehow.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and my big thing with fertility is I only treat both people. I won't just treat the man, and I won't just treat the wife. And if it's a same-sex couple, I treat both boys and both girls. I mean, whatever. But I'm treating. It takes 2 people to make it. I'm treating 2 people. And then the other thing is I just there's always this idea of Spence, should I help you get better or should I just help you sleep better and reduce your stress and then let your body heal itself? And I mean, how many times, that was the one thing I didn't say in the video, but how many, and I'm sure Spence, more people than me, but how many times have you had people that were trying to get pregnant forever, and then they're like, okay, screw it, they give up, they adopt, right? And then 5 years later, out of nowhere, they get pregnant.
Right.
Because all the stress is gone.
Weekly almost, yeah.
Yeah, they're just like, dude, we're just having sex to have fun. Whoops, I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And they didn't change anything other than that they already have a baby because they adopted it and they fulfilled that capacity of their needs.
Yeah.
But so stress is a huge thing, not only for pain and everybody, but I think, like you said, for fertility. I mean, that's just like, you don't even have to ask. You're just like, you've got stress, let's treat it.
Yeah. It's my goal with most patients is to try and get them to a place of surrender, and that involves a lot of letting go, and that is also very stressful. So
yeah, that's huge.
I'm probably causing stress, but I'm trying to help them with it too.
Yeah.
That Bujang, I'm excited for my RPL or recurrent loss patients, and if there's any unusual bleeding. I've got a woman today with fibroids and that I'm about to see for an initial unusual bleeding. I'm excited to try some of these, which is great. And I wish I was a female because I'd try those three sisters. Because I when you talked about you want big things to happen, do big things, and like it just made me sit and do a little meditation on how powerful points are in the thigh, in the big meaty part of the leg.
That's certainly a part of the body that we kind of disrespect in TCM. We don't really do a lot of points up there. I mean, probably the most popular point up there is stomach 32 or 34 is the meeting point.
10 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, spleen 10. Yeah, that's probably it, right? And so from a tongue perspective, we always think kind of like for like. And so, a bone for a bone, a muscle for a muscle. And then we also think like if you want to have like a big effect, like if someone has a ton of fatigue and a ton of weakness, well, they need big muscle strength. So where are big muscles located? Oh, big muscles are in the upper thighs.
Yeah.
And so we'll use a lot of points like that. And so these big bones, big arteries, big vessels, and that's I'm speaking metaphorically, but even clinically that proves out when you work on thigh stuff and even leg stuff in general, very powerful effects. Yeah. And Master Tung, their favorite part of the body for long-term for chronic issues was two things: always bleeding, because that moves so much blood,
right?
And the immune system and all those things that happen with bleeding. But then also the other big part they like to needle was the legs,
right?
Because they're big.
Yeah.
They're bigger than your arms, and they have a really big effect. And there's some really wonderful points for habitual miscarriage, the 88, 12, 13, 14 on the upper thigh, on the liver channel. Very, very nice that's kind of what saved my daughter's life. Some very big points, much more than just a spleen 10.
Yeah. I wish I can just massaging my leg after what you were talking about. I'm like, wow, that effect is big, and I can't be intimate like you said, being a male, I would never choose those liver points or anything around the groin like that. But I think that's great, especially, if you're a woman. And something else, Brad, you touched on a lot was breath and lung. And I think that's something overlooked by a lot of fertility practitioners. So what was kind of your foundation?
So my big thing with breathing, right? I mean, it's really hard to be pissed off if you breathe right. Yeah. And I mean, and if you catch yourself being sad or angry or lost, or even like me starting my new clinic, I get stressed. Well, of course, you got a lot on the line. Okay, what happened? You forgot to breathe. Yeah. And breathing is pretty cool because, that's obviously the function of the chi and the oxygen, but also we just learned recently that, your lungs make blood, so they've got a whole nother function. Your lungs are really powerful for getting over into your heart. That's like the other big thing. If you don't breathe right, your heart's going to be screwed up. And I think this whole breath idea of just, when you breathe right, I'm also a big believer in Wim Hof and the cold therapy, and that's about breath and like all these things that are happening with your immune system, your vagus nerve, your parasympathetic nervous system. When you're not breathing right, all those are whacked out. And you look at what the vagus nerve does for fertility, you look where your parasympathetic nerve or your parasympathetic nervous system does for your fight or flight, for hormones, for stress, for adrenaline, cortisol. I mean, all those things are massively important for you and I chilling out and conceiving. I mean, and even if you look at the body, even we know, the body can't fight and make love. I mean, you get chased by a tiger, but you ain't making love. And so if you're always getting chased by a tiger or coffee or stressed or pissed or freaked out or sad, your body doesn't have the ability to say, okay, you know what, I need to stop this fire, but I need to create something. Yeah. You got to stop the fire so your body say, oh, okay, I got time to create. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And that's even why I get into fasting, because if you eat all the time, your body never has time to repair, because what's it always doing? It's breaking down food. It's the same concept of you can't do both. You can't break down and repair. So if you intermittent fast, then your body says, oh, I got no food. I'll go repair some things.
Yeah.
And then it starts repairing stuff.
Yeah.
And so this idea of stopping the leak and saying, okay, now let's fix the pond, versus you're just like, dude, you're trying to fill the pond up, but man, you got leaks everywhere, brother.
Yeah.
And that's the conversation I try and have. And that's why I think breathing, it all starts with that, right? Because all that stuff is predicated off your breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I come from in that. And I'm a big Wim Hof guy, and I've done Vipassana meditation where we sit for 10 days and all that stuff for years and years and years. And I think in the breath is just, you look at all the things that come with the breath. I mean, basically life, but then the organs and how they're all connected. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's the only thing we can't live without for more than a few minutes, right?
Right?
Literally.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, how many of your fertility patients do you, boys and girls, that don't,
take a breath,
and do that all day, every day?
Yeah. Well, I commonly ask patients, I'm like, do you remember the last time you consciously took a deep breath? Oh, I've never had a yes.
Never. Yeah, never. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, again, the absence, unfortunately in the Western society, we think, well, my lungs are fine, Brad, I don't have bronchitis. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about breathing correctly. Yeah. And that's the same thing. I mean, just like, yeah, Brad, I eat. No, but do you eat correctly? And that breathing, I think, is a big thing. And the tongue points, again, there's reaction areas or there's nerves. We're not just talking channel, image, mirror, blah, blah, blah. We're actually talking actual nerves that go up the spine to the mid-cortex that will hit the mid-cortex and make the lung function increase.
Right.
And that's what these nerves do. They'll make the lungs increase. Now, that could be lung qi, that could be COPD, that could be anything, because acupuncture doesn't think in Chinese terms. Acupuncture thinks in function terms.
Yeah.
And so can we increase the function of your lungs? Yes. Okay, do those points. Yeah. And that's how those points work.
I love that you touched on the sympathetic and parasympathetic, because that is
huge, man.
That should be a piece of every fertility consult, because you're either in fight or flight or feed and breed, and breath is one of the quickest, simplest ways to get you there. One thing. I
mean, I don't want to make love all night if I'm pissed off all day.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and or you can see the production in your muscles. You can see the production in your sperm or your egg. You can see the production in your blood flow. You can see the production in your inflammation. I mean, you can see the production in your swelling, your eating, your habits, your stress, all that. I mean, who wants to create?
Yeah.
Give me a chocolate chip cookie and a stupid movie, right? I mean, that's if you're that freaked out.
Yeah. I'm excited to about another point that really resonated with me was I just made my own names maybe for some of them, but you called it wood anger.
Yeah.
Like that's basically to me instantly translated in my mind, just like you, to a herbal formula like Long Dan.
Right.
And so I'm excited to use that on men, but you on that same line of stress and in particular effects on hormones, you mentioned a study that I had, or something that I had never heard of. It makes perfect sense to me, but you used to be a soldier, so on the research on soldiers and their hormones when they're stressed and when they're not, and how it can revert back. Can you?
Yeah, I'll pull the study for you, but there's a lot of studies shown on men pre-combat and post-combat. Yeah. And like pre-combat, their hormone levels are normal for their age, and then post-combat or post a traumatic life event, typically your hormone production is less. For the men, it was either the same or less than prepubescent boys.
Crazy, yeah.
So, and what that shows is stress just kills hormones. And so why is that? Because just like, again, if you're being chased by a tiger, what does your body do? You'll basically evacuate your bowels because your body's trying to survive.
Yeah.
And same thing with hormones. Your body says, okay, hey, man, we're not creating, we're surviving, we're shutting down fertility because who gives a shit? We're going to be dead in a day anyways.
Resources.
Let's amp everything up to adrenaline and, fight or flight and cortisol and all these other things because, dude, we got to be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll make love next week.
Yeah.
Right. But if we don't fix this, we're going to be dead. And so it's very interesting. And I think that's why I stress for me, hormones, it's just huge. And there's a lot of studies that show not only that one, I like just that one because it reminded me of being in the Marines, but there's a lot of studies that show stress and hormones.
Yeah.
They're almost, as one goes up, one goes down.
Yeah.
They're not, they're like that.
Yeah. I just like
almost
that,
poets.
It's from the male perspective, I'm always looking for, ways to translate. And whether they actually read them or not, a lot of men come in wanting evidence or something, and I, I'll chat with you about I'll actually look for those with the soldiers because they'll
I'll get
resonate
that.
a
I'll
little
get
bit
that
more.
study for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, okay, in Brad's course, I have hardly touched on it, but the PDF that you accompanied it with alone is probably worth, I don't know. I was like, I thought it would just be your slides that you flashed up and that during that, but it's that and like a whole book.
Pretty much, yeah. No, I gave everyone a ton of stuff because there's some things I touched on and didn't. And again, some people hear what I say, some people tune me out, which is not uncommon, and some people learn by hearing, and some people learn by seeing. And I wanted to give everyone everything because I firmly believe this, and again, this goes back to kind of where our industry is going. I believe in kind of the freedom of information, that this stuff isn't restricted, and we need to give it to people, and people need to have it. And then once you have it, I almost even like giving you more information that I talk about, because if I talk about it, I almost jade it for you.
Right.
But if I just give it to you naturally, then you can look at it and say, wow, you know what, Brad never talked about this. How can I make this mine? Yeah. And that's really what I want to go with this stuff. It's like, here you go. Here's this book, and I'm not going to give you anything because I want you to get into it and create your own stuff. And that's the whole idea, because then you make it your own, and then it becomes you. Yeah. Versus you copying someone. It doesn't work that well. Yeah. And I'm not about control, and I'm not about ownership, and I'm not about people. Like, I just want to get that stuff out to people.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yeah, hopefully I gave a ton of information.
I mean, I don't know when I'll even have time to get through it, but I mean, it's so much on the tongue system, which is really great. You've made it succinct, but it's still a lot. And then all your slides and all the points and explanation stuff. I'm excited to dig into that and to get my team to as well, so we can all kind of communicate. But so far I'm incorporating primarily that one amazing point into my like loving protocols for the stress, pain, and
GB31 sleep. Man.
And so I'm excited. It's one of those leg points that I can get at. So if you want to know what that point is, go take Brad's course. Yeah. But because it's worthwhile. It's short. It's inexpensive. It's succinct, and it's all Brad. I know we both have a lot to get to today, but I wanted to is there anything else you want to leave people with before we go today? Yeah,
I think it's a really nice class. I think I wanted people to realize that Master Tung stuff is not just about pain. Also that these points are out there for everybody, and it's not about ownership or control. And I think it's also about you guys not leaving what you already know. It's about adding to it. And I think that's the piece. I mean, I think all of us are always trying to experiment, add to things. And this comes from me, who's in the clinic every day, treating and failing and learning and thinking and trying. And there's certainly some points that are popular in the tongue system that I hate because they don't work that well anymore in our modern day society. Yeah. And that's hopefully what I can give people is that, look, this is a guy that still treats every day in his clinic in a modern day America with modern day patients, modern day problems. And this is not what this is sometimes how it shows up in books, which is great, but also how does it show up clinically? Yeah. And like, that's all I care about. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Like, how does it show up clinically, and not 1 out of 10 times or not 1 out of, no, I mean, I'm talking 80% plus. It has to be effective. And that means if I do it or my wife who doesn't know acupuncture does, if I tell my wife where to put the needle and she puts in and don't work, then that point's worthless because it shouldn't depend on how you and I put it in. Yeah. It should just matter. If you put that needle in that spot, you and I and everyone else in America, Ireland, Africa, my wife, whoever, we should damn near have the same effect every time. Yeah. And if we don't, let's get rid of it. Yeah. And if we do, let's keep it. Yeah. And that's that's what I'm hoping that other people will value, is that type of idea of, okay, let's rubber meet the road. Where are we at? Chinese medicine is dynamic. It's never static. It's been changing forever. How are we going to change in 2018 and meet our patients' needs? Yeah. That's what I try and give to people.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing, Brad. If you treat fertility in your practice, I think it's just a must that you should understand at least the basics of the Master Tung system and how it can help your practice. So jump in to Brad's course and
it's easy.
check
It's
it out.
not as hard as people think. It's pretty straightforward. You just do a couple points for a week or two, and then you do a couple more points a week later, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, piece of cake.
It's reinvigorated my just love of like understanding the points that do resonate with me and with my patients, and yeah,
that's awesome, man. No, I'm glad that it lit you up, because I certainly made it for someone like you that's smart and is already doing this stuff and is just saying, hey, how can I use maybe 5 or less points to kind of jazz my practice? And that's what that course is for. Like, how do you get jazzed up a bit more? And that's hopefully, I'm glad that satisfied your need.
That's exactly. Well, Brad, thanks. And I'm also, just as a prelude, excited about the mail side, the mail course that you're working on too. So I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah.
But otherwise, have a great day down there in Portland.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll chat with you again very soon. Go check out his course. The links are below.
All right, cool. Thanks, buddy.